Okay, so far, is there any question? That's fine. Clear? Okay. So this task proved that a little bit of the task during this, incubation seems to stimulate some creativity. And from consistent with this, there has been some kind of suggestion, which is consistent with some of what you have also suggested, that inattentive or unconscious thoughts may be more beneficial than the deliberate and focused, kind of the thinking to deal with a difficult question in the life. And in fact, in 2006, there was a very interesting paper published, and I liked it a lot. And the name of the paper is on the making the right choice, the deliberation without attention effect, because this one seems to suggest that in some case, not paying attention to the task improves the performance, or without seeing it, that sort of improves the performance. So the way this task goes is as follows. So, for example, when there are 4 types of a car, like here it's a schematically shown. It's sort of fake kind of car company's name, Hatsudan, Kaiwa, Daska, and Nabusi here. These 4 types of a car is presented to the subject, and each of the car has a different kind of property. Like Nabusi has a good mileage and so on. So each of the car has explained by its good or bad kind of property, like good mileage and things like that, one by one. And if there are many features for each of the cars, then it overwhelms your attention span or working memory. So it becomes very difficult to keep track of all of these good or bad kind of properties. And then after that, people are either asked to think about which car would be good, analytically, deliberately, or doing again, easy task, distracting task a little bit during this, incubation period. And then initially, what the author was reporting was that when the task was very complicated, like 12 aspects, then doing a little bit of the task and then distracting subject improves the performance compared to this highly focused state of that situation. Whereas if it's very few number of the property, then you can benefit from paying attention and also thinking about it consciously. And this was also replicated in the case of the purchase of the items. For example, furniture in eye care tend to be much more expensive than some small utensils or some pens and toothbrush and things like that was purchased in the supermarket. And when they looked at whether they carefully thought about it or they made a decision right away, and then afterwards whether they were satisfied or not. So here, everyday small price item is satisfied after thinking about it very carefully. But if you don't think about it and just buy it, it's you're really satisfied less. And then the opposite goes in the eye care situation. So here, overthinking seems to be doing bad when the matter is complex or difficult to think. Okay. However, it turned out I actually thought this was interesting, and so I have cited this paper a couple of times in the past and also presented in the class before. But recently I found that this paper, Neuwenstein, who is actually my friend in Holland, he did a high-powered study and also very careful meta-analysis of this effect. And then it turns out that this is basically impossible to replicate. And in fact, if you look at this replication index website, of this first author, who is now retired or doing just the writing of the pop science. He admit that there was some kind of problem with this procedure. Especially when he replied to this author in this blog, he says that, oh yeah, at the time, especially before 2010, we tended to report the experiment that worked, meaning that effect was less than p 0.005. Then we tended to report the experiment, but if it didn't work, then we just didn't report that. So if they had like 6 experiments and then 4 of them worked, then they would write only 4 about 4 studies in the paper, but completely hide or didn't mention about these 2 failed experiments. And because they did that, it turned out that this effect is coming out from the untruth hypothesis, and in fact it's not possible to replicate. So this is very annoying kind of situation, but prevalent in psychology, social psychology, and also it's becoming kind of known in other fields. It's at the moment unclear whether the psychology is the only one who is suffering this, but maybe other field as well. And one of the reasons psychology has been targeted on this replication failure is that first of all, replication is easy to do, right? Easy to try. But if you, for example, try to replicate going to the Mars or going to the moon, replication itself is super difficult to do. So it's not possible to do it easily. On the other hand, social science or social psychology is easier to do, and that's why they can test this replicability kind of study. And when they do that, then some of the authors tended to do this kind of so-called p-hacking or withdrawal of the results. So it resulted in this type of things. So recently, neuroscience, psychology, and many other fields started to do this practice called a registered report. And that's something that our lab does almost regularly by now, meaning that before you collect the data, before you conduct a study, you write the plan of the experiment, and then you get reviewed at that stage. And then when the reviewer says that, okay, this is nice question to ask and a nice design to test, and then they already accept the paper as it is, and then only after that we start to collect the data. And then if the result is going to the opposite of what we expected, we are still guaranteed to be able to publish the result. So that's a kind of a future direction of the psychology, and clearly this unconscious attention or unconscious inattention thought effect is not the kind of thing that is established through this practice yet. So, but one thing to notice is that especially when papers are published somewhere like in science, then number of the citation is really humongous. It can make one people's career out of it. However, even when more rigorous and nice study is done, 10 years later, it's less easy to cite, and then it's probably continue to be cited. This one is more continue to be cited per year, and so it's very difficult to correct for the science. But we need to make an effort to adjust or correct past mistake, and then make a better improvement of the science in the future. I don't have any kind of a personal attack or any bad feeling about any of these authors or but it's just overall direction that psychology, neuroscience, and any other field are going to improve the scientific practice, and that also is true for the science of consciousness. That's the important point. So in summary, paying attention to the task at hand one time is usually the best strategy for learning and performance. And yes, so I actually wanted to anyway, yeah. Yeah, so I was going to introduce this technique called the Pomodoro technique that I already have been doing for this class, in fact. So this is a technique to pay attention one thing at a time, meaning that here you set two kind of timers. If you have an Apple Watch or something like that, it's easy to do. But you set 25 minutes for one thing, and then another thing for the 5 minutes. And then during this 25 minutes period, you do only one thing, and then I try not to do other things. For example, when I'm giving a lecture for 25 minutes, by default, I cannot do anything, but you attendees also focus on this lecture and then turn off everything else like iPhone alert or email or SNS, whatever, and then you don't do any kind of you don't watch other YouTube channel at the same time, but just doing this only 25 minutes. And then if you can do it, then you get some kind of reward or achievement. And then after that, you take a short break, like 5 minutes, 4 minutes, and then do it again. And then if you do it 3 times, then you take a longer break of 20 minutes. And when I started to do that, like last year, it was not that easy for me, but after a couple of weeks of the practice, it started to become much better in terms of the performance. And so I do that continuously. So I recommend you to do that, and I recommend the book maybe next week or in the slide I upload in the Moodle later. And also same thing can be said about single task versus multitask situation. In general, learning and the performance is much better with a single task situation. So if you do 2 things at the same time, it's not good. But doing this for 25 minutes and then completely switch to another topic is actually a good thing. Or you can also do the another way, which is that after 25 minutes, even if what you're doing is not complete, like trying to solve the math, but after 25 minutes, if the bell rings, then you just stop, and then after that you just start do some other topic and so on. This is called the Zeigarnik effect. But this incomplete task at the after the one period of very focused time seems to enhance your memory and also creativity as well. It's like a sort of the this distraction effect. I'm not sure whether this part is replicated or rigorously studied. So I'm not 100% sure about the scientific validity about that. But multitasking is in general known to be bad for your performance, especially if you do it within a short period of time. And so in general, Pomodoro technique and single tasking are recommended. But in some situations, attention can harm performance. For example, like doing the master skills like dribbling or attention blink and combination with the dual task of the hearing some nice music. Okay, so but this kind of area is quite controversial sometimes. So be mindful. So check the replication effort or pre-registration status of the study. Now, having said that, the next question in terms of attention and the consciousness is that whether the attention always enhance consciousness and attention always necessary for seeing things. In the case of the attention blink, it seems it's already saying the answer to no to this, but we'll see how it goes for the next part. So far, is there any question? Okay. So let's move on. So attention, so let's skip this part. Okay. So this is actually the book that I was going to recommend. So it's there here. So this is one is Deborah Zack's single tasking, get more done one thing at a time, and the second is a Pomodoro technique by Francesco Cirillo, and the Essentialism, Greg McKeown. If you want to be more efficient or productive, these are the kind of the books that I strongly recommend. All right. So let's get to the next point. So now more academic side. What are the possible relationships between attention and the consciousness? Relationships between attention and consciousness is controversial, and we look at this class part on the classification scheme proposed by Victor Lame, the guy in this picture. So he first considers one option of the consciousness attention relationship, which is serial, and also attention is necessary for consciousness, or attention acting as a filter. So here, sensory inputs bombard brain, as usually kind of explained in the literature, and then only attended part becomes conscious. So that's this model. Okay. Among all the sensory inputs, you selectively attend it, and that becomes consciously available, consciously experienced, and then consciously reported. And the unattended part goes somewhere else. And then something like here is that the three-partite kind of scheme. Among all the sensory inputs, some of them remain unconscious, and then unattended, and then attended one goes into conscious experience to conscious report. And these two are highly similar, but basically attention determines consciousness kind of model. Okay. And then the second model is attention, consciousness comes first. So once you experience, or even without experience, maybe you first have a conscious experience, and then other parts of the brain supports unconscious processing. And then within what you are experiencing, you can choose to attend one part, but not the other. So that's a sort of a consciousness first kind of approach. And then this one presupposes that many more inputs reach consciousness, but only we can report about the parts, only one at a time. And then for that, we need attention. And also the last one is a serial models of attention. Now, the parallel model comes in this kind of flavor. So for example, among all the things that comes into the brain or sensory input, some of them are selected by attention and the focus of attention. And that's sort of, gives rise to consciousness and also conscious report. But here, it's not like, consciousness, then attention, or attention, then consciousness. So they don't talk about the order, but it's sort of parallelly looking at, and then only the under part of the consciousness and the attended part goes into experience. And then the more sort of the liberal kind of scheme is the consciousness and attention are almost like orthogonal. Some parts of the sensory input is consciously experienced, but not in other part. And then attention can be paid into both conscious aspect and also unconscious aspect. And if you have been following my lecture so far, I've been implicitly, advocating for this kind of, model as a sort of a starting point. And then this result in both, conscious, benefit of attention in this part, but you can also have a part where you don't have you are not paying attention to it. On the other hand, for the unconscious or invisible thing can also benefit from attention, this part, or completely, ignored and then unattended. So this is a 2x2 scheme of attention. So that's roughly the currently available attention or consciousness scheme. And many options of the relation for consciousness and attention have been proposed. And the question is whether they are serial or parallel, or necessary. One is consciousness or attention necessary for the other, and is one sufficient for the other? And to test the questions, and we need some kind of empirical methods. And the particular method that we are going to look in the next section is to manipulate attention without changing consciousness. And this reminds you, hopefully, in the last week, sort of the methods when we discuss about manipulate consciousness without changing other things. And we do now only on the attention side. And if the attention and the consciousness always go together, then manipulating attention should also result in changing consciousness, but it may not be the case. That's the question. So, so far, is there any question in this section? Okay. If not, then let's move on. So the next section is the question about how can we manipulate attention with or without affecting consciousness. So we can manipulate attention using either stimulus in a bottom-up manner, using a queuing kind of task, where, for example, when we have an, let's say, some kind of stimulus on the display, and then you are fixating here. And then before you show this stimulus, you put the arrow cue, for example, here. And then you may pay attention to the right side, and then your detection may improve or not. And I think your task, practical project task, indeed, manipulate the attention in using a cue, right? Either up top of the fixation or bottom of the fixation. And I hope that now that you probably have done that, you kind of understand what I mean by this queuing. But anyway, so queuing is one way to manipulate your attention in a bottom-up manner. And then another one is this instruction or rule. So this does not depend on the stimulus, but your volition or your goal determines what the kind of attention you're paying in the current situation. So this is the, for example, dual task situation. If you remember attention blink, now I can actually play it again. So here, the last time you couldn't see R then C, right? Now, I'm gonna play the video again, but this time you try to see only C and then ignore R. So the sensory input is the same, but now you try to see C, okay? So type in the chat when you are able to see the C without, if you disregard, R by changing instruction. Okay, are you ready? So please type in the chat if you are able to see C this time. Okay, ready, go. Okay. Yeah, okay. So now you saw. All right, great. So this means that, when you are paying attention to, change your attention, your experience also changed, even though the stimulus, input itself is the same, right? That's great. All right. And the latter is quite, interesting because we do not, introduce a sensory confound by changing the stimulus, but we just isolate the change only in attention, right? So by finding the situation where you can just change the attention and then see whether that also changes consciousness, like the one you saw in the attention blink is quite striking way to go with this research. And with that, I'll take another break for 4 minutes.